Right? And I'm not playing no games. Yeah.
All right, folks, welcome to another comic book talk. This one, we get to give credit to Monkey Jeebus. He requested some sort of conversation involving a comparison, if you will, Kingdom Come, Marvels, and we kind of caveated the Marvels to Earth X because it really is better of an apples to apples comparison to Kingdom Come. And I said, well, listen, no one loves Kingdom Come as much as this guy. I've been on streams. I know he loves Kingdom Come. I'm sure he's representing. How you doing, my friend? What's going on?
I am well. Thank you for having me. I'm when you threw this at me a couple weeks ago, I was really excited to dive into this topic. Alex Ross is just his level of comic book art is beyond comparison. Really, there isn't anybody else who does what he does. And these three books, Marvels and Earth X specifically, yes. Or I'm sorry, Marvels and Kingdom Come. Forgive my brain, I'm very old. But Earth X there is a tie-in between these three books that links them all together. So
yeah. I will say that it was one of those things I wasn't in on super early, and we'll get to that. But once I was in, like you said, the photorealism was kind of mind-blowing for its time. Like he was really the first one. There's been a few others that have done some of it. Definitely not on his scale, especially not for whole books like this. Definitely not. Obviously, I have Justice as well, which is the DC, basically like a Super Friends version, little Super Friends story, which I highly recommend. That is a nice, fun read. But so let me ask you that. So let's start with your first exposure to any of the three, which was where did you land on finding these?
The first one I saw was Kingdom Come, and this was back in the day. I don't remember where we were living. It must have been San Diego. No, it must have been San Diego. But I wasn't really even a comic book nerd at that point. I was interested in comic books, so none of this had happened yet. But we were in one of the bookstores because you used to be able to buy these things in bookstores, and I saw Kingdom Come in there, and I was just like, "What am I looking at?" I'd never seen the representations of these heroes in such a realistic form that as soon as I opened those pages, it was like going into just a completely different world. Alex Ross's art brought you into that world. You weren't just looking at art and reading frames. You were there. And you get that hyper realism, as you said, from his art. It is very enveloping.
Yeah, I wanted to share because this was so. I have a few of the copies, and I will say I was with Marvels first. Marvels did come out first. It came out in '94.
Yep.
I was knee deep. I had like the flea market comic shop. I didn't have an actual store, but I had the flea market booth equivalents. And it was I showed you before we started. This is a Marvel Zero, and it was actually that. It's literally his foot on the glass. And I remember seeing this, and I thought to myself, "What on earth am I looking at, and how do I get it?" And I have most, and I will say that I wasn't a massive fan of some of the characters that he did, but then he sort of like changed my perspective. Look at Angel. Like I just was blown away at this perspective of we're going to walk through these universes, and he repeats that when he goes over to DC to do this sort of Elseworld Kingdom Come story of what would happen next. So when you found Kingdom Come and you found Alex Ross, I mean, I don't know about you, but my socks were kind of like knocked off. Like I'm like, holy cow,
Yeah,
this is
absolutely.
really intriguing on next level.
And it wasn't, it wasn't just the art. The writing in these books, Mark Waid for Kingdom Come, and then was it Kurt
Busiek, yeah.
Busiek for Marvels. The writing, these stories are fascinating stories as well. And then Earth X. Earth X is, as far as my tier of these books goes, it's Kingdom Come, Marvels, and then Earth X. So we can dive into the reasons for that once we start really having the discussion. My God, I derailed myself completely. Where was I going? I forgive me.
I don't know where you were going, but I'm sort of like with you in the sense that because the stories were so good and you
Oh,
were so
sorry.
immersed
Yes.
in the journey, basically,
Yeah.
right?
Yes. And they were unique. These were unique stories for comic books. Um, Marvels that man on the street perspective, and then following that through those decades, and then Kingdom Come with Norman and McCrae again, and the uniqueness of Kingdom Come being that it was a different timeline. You weren't, these are the older versions of the heroes. These events have happened that have put them on this course to Armageddon.
Mm.
And then with Earth X, it's not dissimilar in that you have the observer perspective with X-51 Machine Man, Aaron Stack, but it is different. Again, different versions than you've seen of these heroes because the mists have been released, and everybody has a power now. So it's not just a straightforward boom 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 story arc that you generally your weekly monthly story stuff.
I think with um, Kingdom Come, we'll spin our wheels there. For me,
Okay.
it was like I'm reading along, and I love the element of how things would go into the future, and you have such a life lesson. Talk about a story that speaks to
Yes.
today, right? The younger generation of heroes who have lost sight of their nobility and their
Mhm.
responsibility, like the Peter Parker mantra of "with great power comes great
Yes.
responsibility." That is basically that's gone completely out of the window when we are introduced to Kingdom Come.
Yes.
Um,
And I mean, what the events of this book, um, because I mean, it's the choices that are made with Magog, and Magog actually is the one who says it best when he's in Kansas, and all these terrible. So I mean, for those who aren't familiar with the story, um, we meet Norman McKay, and he's talking to his friend whose name Wesley, who was the Sandman,
with
but
Sandman, yeah.
he's having the visions of the apocalypse that's coming. Um, and then Wesley steps out. There's the chaos in the street, and then he's greeted by let me zip ahead here. Oh, the restaurant. The restaurant is really funny. We'll have to talk about the restaurant. But he gets greeted by the Spectre, who is going to take him on this journey because Armageddon is coming, and Spectre needs a human guide to take him through these events. And Norman is the man. It was going to be Wesley, but he died, and now it's passed on to Norman. And the heroes are gone. And that's the tragedy and the brilliance of this book. The heroes are essentially gone coming into the story. They adopted Magog, who killed the Joker. Let me jump ahead here to oops. Am I out of that comic book? I
Well,
am.
let's go back
Yeah,
up
yeah.
front where you were. So,
Okay.
we can touch on briefly the cosplay restaurant briefly because it is kind of
Oh
fun.
gosh, it is
That
hilarious.
so it is nice that we have sort of like this introduction, but then when we cut to this restaurant, which comes into play again later on, is the fact that it's almost like I got to be honest, it's the nerd
Oh, let me
fantasy. If you wanted to have like a superhero cafe where people would dress up and role play, kind of
there we go.
imagine the Pulp Fiction celebrity restaurant that he created, and having sort of a Justice League thing. These are not the actual characters. These are
No.
waiters and waitresses that are having to work at the restaurant and these different kinds of things. And there's all these gags about the type of food that they have and different kinds of things like that, as well as there's tons of like little homage on the walls. With obviously they're on the left is the first appearance of Batman. It's
Yes.
Batman 1 kind of thing there. So it's really
And
really cool
the
stuff.
actors don't even know who they are necessarily.
No, they don't even know.
This
Like the Green Lantern guy doesn't really
yeah,
understand his history.
what you call him? Green Arrow?
Yeah, he's Arrow. Yeah, yeah. And then when we
And
go
it's,
down a little bit and we end up back at our story, because it's almost like a side journey for our
yes,
narrator, because we're going to go through this as well. So the Spectre is using this person, but we're also using this person. And then when you see the violence in the streets, like these heroes are really not interested in minimizing casualties,
no,
as you
they
can
don't
see.
care. They
They
don't
just
care at
don't
all.
care. They just do what they do. They're above the law anyway. No one's going to hurt them. Like they're just there's chaos. Look at the
Yeah,
laughing.
yeah, this thing, yeah,
Love
this
that.
says it all right here.
Yeah, he just doesn't care who's in casual. And then of course, when you have the tears flowing down the child's eyes, you just realize it's just absolute chaos in the streets, and no one seems to care. And they're the children and grandchildren of the
Yes.
legendary superheroes that we knew in our timeline of reading comic books. So that's kind of the general premise of the book for those of you who've never read it, which it is really one of the best books of all time. It's only 4 issues.
Oh, yeah, I would agree.
Truly, it's definitely one of those. I don't know how you could get very far down a list before you could exclude a book like this. Is crazy. So this is still the funeral. This is going through the situation for him as he gets to meet the
Yes.
Spectre.
And he's, he started having the visions after Wesley. And we don't really even need to dwell on the
No.
Wesley part of it a ton, just because it's not super important. It is, the beginning of the plot, but it's there in the beginning. It's those visions of Armageddon and Revelations is what you're getting.
Mhm.
And then Wesley, I mean, he's kind of lost now. He's not bringing the hope to the sermon. He's bringing the dark, um, which is not what his people are. That's not what they need right now. They need hope, and they're not getting that because he's not capable of delivering it based on the world that is around him and the things he's seeing in his head. Uh,
Yeah, he's definitely having a book of Revelation moment, and it's a hard thing to
yes,
teach and preach on. And he's like, I don't understand why this is happening. He doesn't want to deal with this. And poor Norman's face to face with the Spectre of all things, which is one of the most interesting and cool and menacing characters in the
yes,
DC universe. It's never really, I think, done consistently well. Like I think Ostrander has a great run, but most of the time, Spectre is not really particularly interesting.
no, and
But he is in
he's
this.
super powerful though.
Yes.
People don't really get the just how heavy the weight the Spectre brings. He is the wrath of God. He is justice. He is vengeance. Haha.
Mhm.
But he can change time. He can manipulate events so that it justice comes the way that he sees fit.
Yeah.
He's a tremendous character.
Yeah. And then when we move forward a little bit here, we get to our sort of our introduction. We get to our actual heroes, like where are they now, kind of thing. And that's, folks, again, you can read it for yourself. We get
Yes.
to Kansas and we see where is Superman? Well, this is Superman. Superman is kind of retired. He's checked out. He's just doing his work. He's doing his own thing. And we get some of the backstory. I don't want to spoil every single detail for folks, but look at the imagery that Alex Ross gives you in this great story with Wade, where he's just like, carrying the tractor just effortlessly.
Yep. And that's that
Superman,
reminiscent of Action Comics #1.
yeah,
It's a throwback to that.
yeah, it's just beautiful stuff before Wonder Woman shows up, and they start to have this great back and forth, and you get these beautiful, elegant creations, these beautiful looks at Superman and Wonder Woman, and then the story kind of moves and
Yeah, I'm gonna
advances well.
pull off of this real quick so I can get my images lined up properly. So sorry about
Sure.
that.
Then so I think what's interesting here is how at the time we had some alternate future stuff, of course. I mean, obviously, comic books has always kind of
Mhm.
been fun dabbling with stuff, but there was something about Kingdom Come, and for me, maybe you agree. On what your thoughts? It seemed very believable if that's what would happen. It felt
Yes.
it felt like a natural progression of enough time. Like maybe not within Bruce's life, because Bruce is kind of a battered old man. He's got like the halo holding his spine together. I mean, Bruce is a
Yeah,
mess.
which is great.
Which
Um,
so maybe not in Bruce's time, but it felt like it was a normal progression that the heroes would lose the ethics of the Golden Age characters, the original Justice League characters, and it felt real. It really, really did. That was the big hook for me on Kingdom Come in particular of the three.
Here we go. Okay, I'm sorry. I had the wrong image pulled up because I'm a goofball. Let me get us back to where we were. But you're right, the aging of the superheroes, because it was for here we go. This is when we're getting the where are they now part of this story, which is just so good. Um, here we go. I'm ready to throw this back up on the screen. Bruce is the funny thing is physically he's the most damaged, but I don't think he's actually the most damaged of all of them.
No.
When you start doing the breakdowns of when you're seeing where everybody is, and you're meeting characters you haven't seen for a long time. Some of them you don't recognize because some of them have changed identities. Um, Dick Grayson is now a character called Red Robin. But Clark, it's Alex Ross chose to do something here with Clark that wasn't really, say, normal or natural, because Superman doesn't age the way we do, because he's a big
Right.
solar battery just sucking in that power. But he
Right.
wanted to make, for the impact of the story, if you didn't look any different, you wouldn't really feel that passage of time. The 10
Sure.
years since he left. And same with Diana. It's not radical, but it's enough that you do see time on her. And they're talking about the events that have unfolded here, the terrible disaster in Kansas, and
Yeah,
then Magog.
we're getting this, if in the book of Revelations, the Gog versus Magog war that plays
Yes.
out, and he's adapted this in this concept of kingdom come, that like, well, what if Magog was real, started to lay waste to things? What if he took advantage of the fact that the superheroes really don't care? Like, there's really not oh, by the way, this
Mhm.
guy's being bad, we have to do something about it, we have to rally as a team. Whereas when Superman finally sees this and Diane's kind of calling him out on it, it's sort of like a pressure point of like, well, this is in your backyard, man. Like, you can't look the other way to something that's
Right.
on this scale. It's in your backyard.
And yeah, Magog, they're running wild because there aren't that many villains left to speak of, because the heroes are taking different measures than the classic heroes did. Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern. They all had that line that they did not cross. But the new breed of heroes doesn't care. They cross that line, so they eliminate the enemies. And then, what's left to fight amongst themselves. So, in Parasite is terrified and he's already beaten, but they won't relent. And they
Mm.
just keep going at him until he causes the event that
Yep.
occurs in Kansas. And then you get to visit the other heroes who are still around. The Flash is still there. And this is Jay Garrick. This is classic Flash.
Yep.
Still doing his bit in his city. He has it under control. Hawkman in the Pacific Northwest,
Yep.
who looks very much just like a hawk, dude. It's the costume is less the costume than it is part of him.
Yep.
And then
Mm.
I love the Alan Scott Green Lantern,
Mm.
keeping Sentinel above the earth, just waiting for something that has never come.
Yeah, he just feels like, well, just he's become like apathetic. Just nothing's happening. Like, it's just not the deal. It's not, none of it's getting to the level of the escalation that you would expect from our history of what these characters were. And we're walking through all this with Norman, and who's kind of like figuring out what has happened, what's been going on. They bring up Batman, and of course, Batman has created these basically robots, these cyborgs that kind of patrol the streets of Gotham, keeping everything under control.
Mhm.
And it's a line. There's like little lines, and we don't have to go through every single moment to spoil the whole thing, but it's like, well, which city has no crime? Like, Bruce is like, listen, I figured it. I figured my city was the worst. I figured it out. You all got the problem, not me. And there are some really interesting truths that kind of play out that, like, wow, okay, wait a minute. So if we got Gotham under control, it really does say something, doesn't it?
Well, it's not quite totalitarian, but Bruce definitely has
Yeah, he's definitely an authoritarian.
He's
His
got a
approach to
fit.
everything.
He's got his fist on the
Yeah.
problem.
Right.
Um,
And I don't want to get too much further into the weeds with the story, because once you get past issue 2,
yes.
it starts to really get into the meat. But you can see the different versions of some of the characters here with this, this attack, and the civilians are going to go over there. It's over. They're not going to make it, right? But then you have the big reveal comes here soon. Like, what on earth? It's Superman. And he's got him under each hand. Like, he's got this totally
And
under control.
it's interesting with the suit, because people read a lot into the black behind the S. Um, Alex Ross was just going with what the original suit design was. It didn't have a lot of the deeper, it wasn't because the terrible events of the world had happened or that he felt like an outcast. This was the original suit design, and he was hearkening back to that, as he did with the majority of the characters.
Right. Yeah. It's very, very, very cool. And we don't want to get, we can't go too much further because it will get into like such extreme spoilers. And
Yes.
I wouldn't want to take away from what people would enjoy. So let me take that down.
And pull that down.
But it involves all these characters. It involves the Legion of Doom type characters, right? You're going to get where some of them are. You're going to get the big twist, and then of course you have. And again, if you read the single issues, it's almost more interesting in the sense of the way the covers are. Now there are 16 jillion versions of Kingdom Come. You can buy a cheap trade paperback. You can buy the omnibus. You can buy all of these different versions, whatever fits your budget. You should be able to find battered copies of trades.
I do recommend getting the deluxe if you can get your hands on it, because the epilogue in that is extraordinary. It's so much fun because you'll learn some things about Superman, and it's just very interesting where that goes. But I like you mentioned it, the lessons essentially in this book, and it's a couple of different things. What happens when they choose to cross the line between life and death? What are the natural, and Batman, this is what Batman always railed against. Why don't you cross that line? Would it be too hard for you? Like, no, it'd be too easy. And once I cross it, I can't go back. And that's what has happened largely with the superhero community. They cross the line and they can't go back. And because they've rejected the guidance of their elders, they don't have the mentors to bring that generation forward. So they're just kind of winging it, so to speak, because they don't have that mature generation of heroes to guide them. And the fact that many of the heroes chose to leave. They made that decision. They abandoned their duty. And what happens in this world as a result of that.
And I think what Ross brought to Wade, and they fleshed out with that, was really an interesting learning experience of what Ross experienced with Kurt Busiek when he put the Marvels together. Because the Marvels is more like we're going to walk through Marvel history. And instead, he was like, well, listen, I want to do something a little bit different. So what if it's set significantly in the future, blah, blah, blah. And I think it was the positives and the negatives of learning through the Marvels, which came out 2 years earlier, of how to paint a whole book, the storytelling that you do, the way you make certain types of changes and decisions. Whereas the Marvels is like chronicling. I mean, you literally have everything from like the original Human Torch and Submariner and Captain America team up all the way through. I mean, literally you can read some of these issues and learn about characters that are from, Bronze Age and whatever. It's just, these are comic books that you may not actually even know about. It was a great learning experience for me. I know I learned a lot from the Marvels of like, oh man, I have a couple of these. I've never really read them, blah, blah, blah. So it seems like that was in the works for me. And again, we do a little bit of the kind of walk through because we have a character that is a contemporary to J. Jonah Jameson, very biased.
Yeah. Do you want me to bring up some of those images?
Sure, we can do a little bit of a book one or two is fine. Yeah, let's.
You want me to bring up? I got Zero loaded in. Do you want me to bring up book one?
The Zero's fine. Zero's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
So it was it was really beautiful to see the way they integrate the story so that you would have a reason to learn about the different characters. You know what I mean? It's like they took the
Yes.
timeline, like, how do we get to this? And it was like, okay, Zero spends most of its time doing the origin of the original Human Torch,
Mhm.
right? So we're gonna have the origin here, and I got to be honest, that shot right there is the one to me is what came to
That
life
one?
for me. Yeah. Oh
Yes.
yeah, that was the
Well,
one for me where I
it's the
felt it.
lighting of it, you know, the
Mhm.
lighting, the way he
Yeah.
makes this him stand out against the dull background of this now new and amazing creation.
Mhm.
Uh, and so while I think Kingdom Come was the most, and this might sound a little weird, the most uh, hero driven of the three that we're going to discuss. Um, Marvel's was the most human,
Mm, sure.
because of the way the stories are told. And granted, you mean you have Norman McKay, and then you see all this through the eyes of Phil Sheldon, the photographer. But it's, I mean, that guidance. But Norman McKay's interaction with the Spectre was so direct, so involved, whereas Phil is literally, you are the observer through Phil.
Right. I may have misspoke when I was describing that too, because with Norman, the Spectre is taking him through this journey.
Yes.
Whereas with Phil, the photographer, he's physically there on the ground. He's actually injured at one point during one of the battles.
Yes.
This object comes at him, and it's how he loses an eye. So you have him articulating also like the perspective of what society thinks of them in their time. Like, excuse me, the way they thought of mutants, the way they thought of certain things, really kind of play into what you're experiencing now.
Yes.
It is. I also think it moves at a different kind of pace because they want to really try to give you a dose of like Marvel history. So their purpose was different with the Marvels versus Kingdom Come. Go back up one second. I want to make sure I hit that real quick. Go back up just a little. There's J. Jonah
This one?
Jameson. There's JJ.
Yes. Young.
So yeah, the young JJJ. And what is fun is, again, it all felt real. You could see how jaded he already was, but not to
Mhm.
the level that we experience later on
Right.
as leading the Daily Bugle. But you see the path. It, you know what it is, Roman, or maybe you speak to this. I don't. I felt like Alex, and in this case, Kurt, and obviously Mark Wade on the other, they're fans.
Yes.
They like
They
this
love
stuff.
these they love these characters. They want you to also love these
Yes.
characters. And so they give you this deep look inside a world that you're not unfamiliar with. We've all seen the heroes, but you've never seen the heroes the way that they are presented in these books.
Mhm. And the story is pretty rudimentary and simple in the Marvels. Like we're just
Yeah.
going to have a
No,
journey.
it is as basic as it could be. What I do love is all three of them I think are, they all have some themes in common. And I think one of those themes is also change.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that's also, I think that's more present in this book than the other two. Um, because and what you had just spoken on, society's views of the heroes through the decades
Hmm.
varies depending on what's going on and media perception and what's being pushed onto the public about the
Right.
heroes.
Right. And Phil calling out Jonah for being unfair at times. Like he
Yes.
literally is calling him out. Like, listen, how can you say that? Like that's not even a legit comment or critique. So a lot of overlap here, obviously with issue 1 and 0, but it is this journey. Let's see how much time is spent with Phil, where you see Phil,
Yes.
uh, meeting a lady, and then ultimately when he's caught in harm's way, and they're gonna get engaged. And here's
Mhm.
the really, really. I mean, I got to be honest. I had not done a lot with Namor until right before that movie come out. the Wakanda Forever. And I revisited some old comics and really gave a lot of respect for Roy Thomas and his wife, who put together a great 12 issue miniseries that chronicled all of it. And then whenever I was rereading this issue and I saw that beautiful, I was like, oh man, this is really something. I
No,
kind of forgotten how much I liked it.
I love this is actually this is fun. You get that same diner, the classic diner shot.
Yes.
I love the way Namor is portrayed in this book. And you're right. He's a character who I know as a good guy and a bad guy because it really just depended. And you do get some explanations of that later on about the why that is, and it's kind of an interesting thing that they did with it.
I mean, they don't skip him, and I think what was important though. Like I got to give them credit because it would have been easy to really shorten a lot of this up. We didn't need a lot of original Torch, Submariner, and Captain America to frame the Marvel universe. And here's the famous, head-to-head based on the cover, the famous cover that was them with him fight. They could have sped a lot of this up, but instead they really wanted to dig in their roots because literally you're talking about decades of comics that we kind of moved on from because Marvel evolved from Timely and just things have changed. Like this is this really old stuff. And like you said, we get this great panel. Rocking the freaking Widow's Peak. I love the Widow's Peak. Yeah. Oh, it's so good.
Well, and Namor, it's interesting because I mean you're seeing Namor through Phil's eyes. So you're seeing him again, it depends on when he's there as the bad guy. One of the things I like about Phil, his sense of humanity's place in now this time when these beings are emerging. It's a confusing thing for him. Feeling like, man, I suddenly just got real small and the world just suddenly got real big with giants walking through it.
And I also think he really represents a very objective conversation about how the public would react, which I think is what you were touching on, right? That, you don't know how to feel. Like, should we just be afraid? I mean, these are a little like gods among us kind of thing. Like there literally is, whole movies built upon some of these themes. The entire premise that they tried to take from, Batman versus Superman was that. And it's like, we transition quickly, which is great because again, decades of comic books, because we were talking about Captain America and you can see the patriotism from Phil. You can see how much he, like all the other citizens that are in the comic book, want to cheer for all of this. And when Namor is teaming up, you're like, well, wait a minute. Was I being unfair
against that guy?
Wait a minute. Yeah, it's really, really done well. So if you've never read this, it is a lot of fun, guys. It is again, it's 4 issues plus the 0 issue.
Yeah.
Reads very quickly. You can get immersed into some of the minutia. Obviously, Ross, he's purposely pulling from a lot of classic photography, classic comic book covers, different things like that. Americana, really purposely trying to put some of this stuff in there. As you can see, he spends a lot of time on that sort of golden age era of stuff before we kind of move pretty quickly into the next sort of like story arc. Basically, each issue almost has its own little story arc that's kind of just thread together with Phil.
Yes, and he does such a nice job of capturing each era. Not just the heroes, of course, but the actual looks of the eras, going from World War II, I think through the 70s essentially is where I think we end up, or even later. But and aging these characters and the changes in motivations for the characters themselves. What happens if you see a wonder too many times? Is it still a wonder? I love that you actually do dive, and it's through one conversation in particular, and I won't blow it, but it's one conversation Phil's having with J. Jonah Jameson where you really understand what is driving him. And it basically comes off as one line. It's like, oh, I get it. I get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just such brilliant work.
Yeah.
Oh,
And just there's
this is
just
the
yeah,
it's
there's
just it,
just so
man.
much stuff. Look at this. Oh, so good. So it's just the OG stuff is just done so well.
And
It's funny. I was
there's the scene you were talking about.
yes, yes. The debris takes him right in the face. Next thing you know, he's eye patch Phil. Yes.
And it's funny because he just walks. He's got an eye patch for the rest of the book because
Yep.
you know it doesn't look comfortable. He doesn't look cool. He looks like a dude who lost his eye.
Yeah. Yeah. It felt very again authentic. Like the Ross work in these stories just feels so authentic and believable. That's how it works. There you go. It's eye patch Phil. That's how it goes the
Eye
rest of the
patch
way.
Phil.
Yeah. And
Oh,
so the
this is
story
another
oh, the
just a
invaders.
cool shot of
Yeah.
the yeah,
Mhm.
dropping down.
Yep. Yeah. So each
Awesome
book is sort
heroes.
of capturing these
Drop both
different
these.
little sub stories in
Mhm.
their respective eras, and you have everything from Silver Surfer and Galactus to the X-Men. You have
Yes.
all of these different elements that come together as Phil is the photojournalist of the Marvel's history for you. So it is really, I got to be honest, as we're talking about it, I started thinking, this really wouldn't be a bad recommendation for a noob to jump in. Like this really would be a pretty good
No.
book for a noob to understand Marvel
Mhm.
history. And we're going to get to Earth X next, but Earth X Zero is the same thing. It's like a history book. And it's like, oh, wait a minute. So you read the Marvels and read Earth X Zero. Now you at least have a lot of that foundational stuff of who's and what's and whatever in a pretty good story.
So for me, well, I think Kingdom Come probably had the most complex story.
Mm,
Earth
yeah.
X had the most complicated story.
Oh, yeah,
Uh,
by far.
there's a lot of things in this book, and you're fortunate that you have all these appendices within the book to because I have the collective edition that has all these little sidebar pages inside that
Mhm.
describes because if you're reading through it, you may not necessarily know who a lot of these people, these characters are. Um, and so you're getting some new characters, but you're also getting old characters who are changed because of the events that have happened to bring us to Earth X.
And I think that's what's important to, like I said, Earth X Zero is a good little history book for
Mhm.
you and catch you up on different things, which I think, which I got to be honest, on my reread, I had kind of forgotten, how much of the Eternals and Celestial stuff that's in there, which is not a very common thing for people to get their hands on. So it was
Right.
nice to see some of that in there. But you're absolutely right. If you don't have a framework and you just start jumping into Earth X, you're going to be like, okay, hold on. Why is Peter Parker fat? Why are there like these little
Yes.
things running around? Like, what is going on? So it's not, it is a book that I, again, they didn't even stop with Earth X. They just kind of kept going. So you have,
No,
Paradise
there
X, you
are.
have Universe
Is it
X, and yeah,
it's just the three, right? Universe X and Paradise X.
yes, yeah.
Is there anything
Fortunate.
beyond Paradise
I
X?
don't think so.
I don't think
um,
I frankly, and this is my opinion only. It doesn't represent that of the Pops channel. I think they should have stopped at Earth X. I think that was enough for me. It was enough. I know other people, you get a good thing going, but you just keep the good thing going. It's an awful lot. It's just an awful lot. I thought Earth X was good. I do have some problems with Earth X, more
oh, we forgot
so than
Paradise
the other
X and
books.
Marvel's X. So there actually is a fourth one that came out. Yeah, I forgot
Oh,
about that. Yeah,
yeah.
Marvel's X was
Okay.
recent. I haven't read that one. Huh.
Okay.
Interesting.
I,
That's a 6-part from 2020.
wow.
That's real recent. I didn't know that. I didn't read that. So yeah, I was so obviously I was really into Earth X. And I did get into Universe X mostly because of the Spider-Man stuff. I really liked
Okay.
Universe X Spidey.
Well, what I
And
did
his
like is the I'll leave it as vague as I can here. The redemption story from some of the characters in Earth X moving forward.
sure.
That was good because you don't really get a lot of that in this book. Um, and one of the things that that this book does have in common, and just so for those of you, why are these three books? This is also an observer perspective book. from the eyes of X-51 Machine Man. He's been brought to the moon by the Watcher, and now you're watching all of these events through his eyes, just like you watched them through Norman McKay and through Phil. So that's that tie-in as well. And the change theme is also very present in this book
And
because of
I don't want
the
to spoil
events.
it too much, but we can, I think, say Black Bolt has decided to release this mist. And the mist
Black
is
Bolt.
released to transform all the Inhumans. So it's going to transfer all of the regular humans into Inhumans. Therefore, the Inhumans will no longer be persecuted.
Yes.
So, we're getting this story through X-51. The Watcher is there. This is what's going on. It like I said,
If they
Earth
go
X
all the way back.
Zero, they do. So Earth X Zero might be a fine book for history, but once you get into the story, you're like, what on earth is happening? And it is definitely an alternate future that Marvel loves their multiverses now.
Yes.
I don't know that they have. I don't know if I assume all of them are in the same universe. Like I don't think they do any other crazy weird things, do they? I think all of these are in the same.
No, the X.
Earth X.
I mean, for the
Yeah.
ones that I'm aware of, I didn't
Yeah.
not knowing that there was a new one. So I don't know what they do in that one, but all these three stay within this world that they've created, this universe that they created.
Right. So I think the Spider-Man that's going to be in this, the Spider-Man that's from Earth X will be in this, the new Spider-Verse movie, the animated movie, the new one, the Cross Spider-Verse.
Okay.
Yeah. Because they're going to use Spider-Man 2099, and he has like a Spider Force team. He's got like a Spider team, and I think this Spider-Man is going to. I'm actually, I got to be honest, I'm so nerded out over that Spider-Man. I'm like, oh, I might actually go see. Yeah, but it's again, the art is a lot more subdued than the previous work. The covers are not. The covers are incredible. They're insane. There's a lot more books, right? 14s. I think there's 14 issues in every single thing. Mm-hmm.
Bunch of these. So that buying, if you're depending on your level of nerddom, the collector's edition may be the way to go. It's also a lot less expensive.
Yeah. And Ross, because Ross doesn't do the interiors. Ross is this is John Paul Leon. Yeah. So it's a big difference with the style and approach. But when we compared what they were trying to accomplish with Earth X versus Kingdom Come, for me, and this is why I agree with you on why Kingdom Come is just so superior. You felt like this was a very natural progression of history. It seemed very much like this could actually be the Earth X. To me, is like an event alternate history. Like it becomes like something bad happened. This is really no different to me than if you remember, like they did like annual mini. They did like the year they did Armageddon 2001. Right, it's an alternate future. This is what would happen. These kinds of things could happen. So it's one of those kinds of things. It didn't feel as natural as Kingdom Come did. And I will admit, I don't care for a lot of the changes. There are a ton of changes I don't like. I got to be honest.
No, I have problems. I don't have a billion problems with this book, but I have certain problems. That me bringing up a product, you'll understand I'm talking with the audience may or may not agree, or they may not know. But I got to say, my biggest problem with the story of Earth X is the Asgardians. Okay. That was the thing for me that was like, okay. I didn't prefer what they did with Origin or where they ended up. That was my, and it was just weird because I mean they are a key part of the story, but for whatever reason that just stuck with me and it's like, okay, fine, I shall accept this, but I'm not.
And I wasn't really. I don't know if they handled the complexity of the X-Men well. The X-Men, I don't know. There's just a whole lot of things I just didn't really care for. I'm nitpicky as well with something like this because it's just, again, it's an alternate future kind of thing. I think with Kingdom Come, I didn't feel like, well, again, the whole point of Earth X is they are rewriting history, right? The humans are going to be changed. I got it. I understand. But on an enjoyment scale, this is why Kingdom Come works so much better for me. So
I agree. One of the things that I did love about Earth XL, I liked the Hulk. I thought that was a really interesting concept that they did with the Hulk.
Yeah, I'm kind of mixed on it a little bit. So
No,
basically,
no,
guys,
and I get it. There were a lot. There was a lot of hinky
no,
stuff
no.
they
It's,
did.
so no. Like again, folks. I love to hear from you guys in you guys in the comments. Let us know. So here, the Hulk is separated from Bruce. So Bruce is they're like pulled apart, right?
Yes.
And the Hulk is this like ape-like looking creature thing, right? And Bruce is a child, right? And you now have to work through this because Bruce can't see, and it definitely is interesting. Again, alternate future is interesting. There's other things like Black Panther is different now. He's mutated.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so there's little things like that. So Thor is female. Like it's just there's a lot of things like long before we had Lady Thor, we actually had Lady Thor. So there's tons of things to like and dislike. And I would say, again, I will say this too, it's also very inexpensive. So this is not something that would cost you a lot of money to get a trade or something like that to get an injured. And it's just kind of a fun alternate future. And I say that with the comparison to something like Kingdom Come. Kingdom Come is like literature.
Yes.
Kingdom Come is heavy. It is good.
Oh, here was what I was talking
Oh
about.
yes, I love this stuff. Yes,
The
designs,
appendixes.
character sketches, character designs.
You actually do get a lot out of this. It's not just more stuff in the book. So it's good to have. I'm glad they included it because it does add
And
to
Ross's work is notorious for having a lot of that. He loves to share some of his designs and concepts. If you go back and look, like remember like the Wizard magazines, the old price guides.
yes.
There would be like interviews and stuff he would do where you would see the paintings and the models that he would use and things like that. And
I love
many
that.
of those have been reprinted now on some of these other versions and things like that. So, but yeah, no, we get different, interesting character designs, and I really can't disagree with you at all as far as Kingdom Come, then Marvels, then this. I think we're kind of seeing eye to eye on all these things, but I'm glad I was able to include you with some of these little breakdowns and thoughts and stuff like that. So it's good. It's good. All right. What kind of show and tell do you have? I got a little bit of everything. I got a little bit of Marvels.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, a little bit of Marvels. Yeah. So there's our Lady Thor. There's our Lady Thor. There's my Earth X.
Well, but the story behind Lady Thor in Earth X, pardon me, must be Loki, is a lot more interesting. You get a reason for it, and it's pretty humorous. They actually they don't play it off as just a swap,
Right.
hello, I'm Thor. No,
Right. No, they have, yeah, no. Nothing is frivolous. Nothing is silly.
No.
It all fits within the framework of what they're trying to create. So I have one of these. I'm going to make it larger here. So this is one of those moments where just because you have a certificate doesn't mean it's worth anything. But when you meet Alex and Kruger,
right on.
Yeah, this is a Midtown Comics one. But yeah, it's you can't get them graded like that. CGC doesn't grade like that. You would have a green label, which is like a death label. Might as well not green it. But you can send it to. There's a different company you can send it to, but again, it's just like that's not the way the market works. Things like that. So yeah, I've got that one. I also did. There's also a little spin-off type thing that they did as well. It's called Heralds. It's because it's before Paradise X, so I had that one as well, which is kind of cool.
I don't think I know that one.
Yeah, it's just like a little fill-in teaser.
Oh man, that's it. I love the middle panel though.
Yeah, it's nice, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah. So yeah, I love that, and I couldn't agree with you more about Ross, like what he brings to the table with that photorealism. It really is interesting and unique. So
I have books that don't tie into this at all, but it was something interesting that I found something I would have never expected to find, and that is Space Ghost, covers by Alex Ross. Man, these are just gorgeous. I think this one is my favorite of the lot. It's just so well done. And this is actually a very, very interesting story as well. And you've probably seen this. A lot of it. This
Oh yeah, I
works
have
all over
copies.
the
Yeah,
interwebs.
like a 6-issue miniseries they did on this,
Yeah,
and
and
just
they
beautifully
take
done.
space very, very seriously. It's not there is not a lot of humor in this book. And in fact, there is some real heavy, pretty dark stuff in that book. And I got one more thing which does tie in, which I just got a couple days ago, just came in the mail. I haven't opened it up yet. It is
Oh,
the Kingdom Come Armored Batman.
always beautiful.
And what I'm hoping they're going to do is release the rest of these and not just throw me a figure. I will be very disappointed if they just do that with a figure. Because
There's
they,
tons of Easter eggs and stuff, especially in Kingdom Come. Like you can feel like he was able to dabble some with the Marvels, but once he got,
Mhm.
because of that success, I think it gave him more leeway with DC to pitch and get the Kingdom Come project. And that's where you end up with all of these incredible homages and little teases and Easter eggs and
Mhm.
stuff like that. So when you get to the end of that series, folks, when you get to issue number 4 and it's kind of wrapped up and they're back in this cafe where they're eating again, just look at all the background. You're going to be blown away at some of the stuff they were able to fit in there. So, but yeah, Mucky Jeebus, hopefully we have had a fun conversation about these. They are kind of fun. I don't know to compare them exactly, but they are fun to kind of lump together as a group because it
Oh yeah.
represents a pretty short period of time. Like it's really a few years where Ross was doing all this work with these amazing artists, 2 different
Mhm.
companies, but really kind of gives us a lot of interesting characterization and information and things like that. I'm really glad that we're able to do that. And I'm glad I was able to have you with me, my brother.
Cool. Thank you very much. Yeah, these are super enjoyable. Like I said, there are just those aspects that are the familiar aspects of each book, the observer perspective in each book, which is on its own is kind of a unique thing. You don't really see that. And like I said, that so, more heavy in some than others, that story of or theme of change, which is
Mm-hmm.
also present in all of these books. And
Yeah.
it's a brilliant series, getting to see characters in some familiar light, more so in Marvel, and others which are way different in Kingdom Come, and then way different in Earth X. Very enjoyable reads though.
Yeah.
Um,
I agree. I think and it's also something to, again, these have been out for so long, folks. You can find inexpensive trades, or you can, if you really love them, you can
mhm.
go even to more of a higher end and get some of the deluxe versions and some of the
Yes.
expanded stuff like that. So plenty of options for you. And make sure you're subscribed to this guy. Connect with his Thursday night show is like a must watch. I don't know what you're doing. If you're in the tubes, you're not catching the 8 o'clock show. Different topics, different guests, different things like that. So it's been a blessing to be a part of it. It's great to have him with us. Hopefully
Well,
you're
thank you.
subscribed to that. All those links are down there. You guys know all the stuff, bells and whistles and all that kind of stuff. Thanks for watching another Comic Talk with me. I am Pops. Thank you again for watching.